Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
A couple weeks ago, I told you that I was sure that my fantasy football team was going to go winless.
Yes, I remember that.
And since then, I've won both games. So now I'm 2-2.
Ooh, well, look at that. You're challenging for first place.
I'm defying the odds.
So your team is better than you thought.
No, it's worse.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today's topic is favorite sports rivalries, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming Winter Olympics, because I'm sure you've heard that the NHL has said that barring any unforeseen circumstances, they're going to send NHL players to the Olympics this year, which is quite exciting.
It just goes to show that the players will prevailed here, right? Because the NHL seemed so against this for so many years, right? And somehow everything changed, right?
Exactly. So good for the players for prevailing. I mean, I don't need to tell you, gone are the days where Canada can just show up and win a gold medal. Not that they won a lot of gold medals at the Olympics, because back in the day it wasn't NHL players. But if you look back at Canada Cups, you know, Canada always dominated. And part of the reason for that was because most of those tournaments were held in Canada, which was an unfair advantage. But, you know, it used to be that Canada could send their B team to these tournaments and that B team would probably win a medal. But that's no longer the case.
Right.
So I've been reading up on, you know, all these so-called experts who are predicting what the Canada roster is going to look like. And I have to tell you, I don't like Canada's team at all.
Well, I mean, the forwards are really good. I mean, just the McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, like the forward power is strong.
But hold on, after those guys that you just named, the forwards are not that good, I don't think. Like, there's guys that I really don't like. Like, part of it, I hate Brad Marchand, as you know. And you know who else is going to be there that I don't like is Mark Scheifele is going to be there, and I don't like him at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't like them, but they're good players. I mean, yeah.
Fine.
The big concern is the goaltender. I don't think Canada does not have a good goaltender right now.
We actually don't. Can you believe?
Yeah. I mean, unless Carey Price somehow comes back and says, I want to go, and then they send him, and hopefully he's still good, but who knows, right? Like
honestly, goaltending is a scary thought. I'll tell you that.
Like, I read an article today about that goalie from the Devils, Mackenzie Blackwood. Like this guy might be the goalie for Team Canada, and he's basically one of the last two NHL players that's not vaccinated. And now they said he finally got vaccinated. So there's only one holdout, not including Evander Kane, who's not active. But basically, there's everybody in the league's vaccinated except for Bertuzzi, right? So yeah, and I was like, this guy's gonna be our goalie? Like, I hope not. You know?
So I mean, let's assume he is vaccinated. I was looking at Mackenzie Blackwood's stats. It's his third. Yeah. This is his fourth season, I think, in the NHL, and his numbers have actually gotten worse every year. Now, okay, you can say that last season wasn't a full season, whatever. It's maybe a smaller sample, but his numbers are fine. But I don't think he's so incredible that he deserves to be Canada's starting goalie.
I know. It's dark days for Canadian goalies. Like, I don't know what's going on. It's kind of weird, you know. So
anyway, did we get any listener mail from our last episode?
Mailbag.
Yes, and sort of.
Well, it's either yes or no.
Well, so our good friend Jesse Jackson from the Set Listing Bruce podcast did email, and he apologized for being late on his Beatles, his favorite Beatles song. So he's a couple of episodes old. He said the song "If I Fell in Love" is his number one song, and he also had in his list "In My Life," "Help," and "Here Comes the Sun," which we had in our lists. There was no actual Weezer mail, but I do have a story to tell you about my wife, because she doesn't need to email me. We live in the same house, so she just tells me what she thinks, even though she doesn't listen to any episodes. First of all, I'd like to wish my wife a happy birthday. It was her birthday on Friday. And like I said, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so she has no idea that we're talking about her. And so you told the story that the song Islands in the Sun, all these years you thought they were saying hey, hey, when they were actually saying hip, hip.
Correct.
So I told her we're doing an episode about Weezer. She's like, Weezer? I don't know any songs by Weezer. I'm like, no, you do know songs by Weezer. You actually like the song Islands in the Sun. And she's like, oh yeah, the song that goes, hey, hey. I'm like, no, he's actually saying hip, hip. And Josh also thought right up until we recorded that they said, hey, hey. So I thought that was really funny. You guys are on the same wavelength, you know?
We can't be the only two people that thought that. So I'm happy to hear that.
And then the other thing is we talked about the song Africa by Weezer because she listens to a lot of Top 40 radio. And she told me, by the way, that song Africa is really bad.
Does she know that it's an old song by Africa?
No.
Does she know that it's an old song by Toto?
Of course. I mean, that's why she thinks it's bad because it's just like a weird remake that's sort of like a karaoke version. Like they didn't change the song at all, you know?
No, they didn't. In fact, sometimes I can't tell which one's which.
That's great. So that's the mail. So hopefully we'll get tons of mail about sports rivalries because, you know, this is a topic that a lot of people are passionate about, right? So we decided, actually, I was with you last week in Toronto.
Right, we had a production meeting and that's where we decided what today's topic was going to be.
Right. I had the idea of sports rivalries and then we decided we'd do not the best sports rivalries in the spirit of our show, like our favorite. Right?
By the way, the production meeting was catered by Swiss Chalet.
That's right. Shout out to Swiss Chalet. So we decided it could be teams or it could be players, right? It could be athlete versus athlete. I don't think I have any players on my list, actually. It's all teams.
Mine is all teams as well.
Right. Although there's a caveat to that, and you'll see why. I do want to go over my honorable mentions, but I just want to give a little bit of like the criteria for like how I made my list, and maybe you can agree or disagree.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously rivalries are very subjective. I mean, if you're a New York Jets or Miami Dolphins fan, you hate each other. Like the Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, Bills, you know, like the AFC East or the AFC West in football, you know, the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Chargers, everybody has a hated team, right? But I mean, obviously our list is going by the teams that we're passionate about. So those didn't really make the cut. And then of course, college is huge, right? I mean, people are going to go hear my list and they're like, how come you didn't include Michigan, Ohio State? Well, I'm not passionate about Michigan or Ohio State or Alabama, Auburn or Texas, Oklahoma. But like, I'm not like slagging these. I'm not like putting them down. Obviously, these are huge rivalries if you went to those schools, right? And, you know, and same thing with Packers, Bears, Cubs, Cardinals, Giants, Dodgers. Like these are giant rivalries, you know, like, but I mean, I'm just not passionate about those, you know? And the other thing is I didn't include these sort of debate rivalries where the players don't actually hate each other. It's the fans that are passionate about like who's better, LeBron or Jordan. We've heard that for 10 years, you know, like I don't think LeBron or Jordan care, you know, like, and Ronaldo, Messi. And I asked my son about sports rivalries and he's like, in his life, the rivalry is LeBron Curry. Like that's actually because they've met each other so many times in the playoffs, but I don't think LeBron and Curry have a hatred towards each other. So like, I based mine on are, first of all, if the media created the rivalry, it's bogus. Like that's made up. You have to have the fans really have to hate each other, and then if the players get involved and hate each other, the actual players, then you know you're like next level real. Like so that's how I based mine.
So that's good, and mine was very similar to yours in that. So none of mine are made up by the media, first of all. And I think it's safe to say that the players on these teams do actually hate each other. So it meets that criteria. And I didn't include any player versus player rivalries. I had some, you know, that didn't make my list, like Gretzky versus Lemieux or Crosby versus Ovechkin, which would have been interesting to discuss, but they didn't make my list.
I also had like Brady versus Manning, Federer, Nadal. And then one that could have made the list, but I'm just not passionate about it, is Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Like that's also another one. But you know, so and then the only other one, just that I just read you my honorable mentions, so I'll just continue with the last two. Canada, Russia in hockey, men's hockey, that's big. It just didn't make the cut for me. And then in the world of soccer or European football. Manchester United, Liverpool, who just played today, and Liverpool dismantled Man United 5-0.
That's a blowout.
Like, as I was watching the game, I was like, the Man U manager could get fired for this game. Like, that's how bad and big this game is, you know, and how bad it went for Man U. but that didn't make the cut. So that being said, we decided we were going to only do top 6, right?
Right, because I didn't like my number 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've heard my possible 7s. I mean, I guess Canada, Russia could have made it, but we'll just leave it at 6.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Number 6.
So number 6, it's a big one. Goes back more than 50 years, maybe 60. And that's Celtics Lakers. And now when I said I didn't include players, this could also be Bird Magic. But I mean, it really goes more than Bird Magic because it starts in the 50s, right? In the 60s with like Bill Russell, Jerry West, and the Celtics and the Lakers have met 12 times in the finals, right? Like, so it's not just Bird Magic, right? Their first time they met in the finals was 59, right? And then these are the two iconic franchises of the league. So anytime that both teams are good, like the league loves it, right? So, I mean, they faced each other 6 times in the 60s, 3 times in the 80s, 2 times in the more recent future, 2008 and 2010. And it's just like, it's pretty iconic, you know? And then when I say that the players have to get involved, I don't know if you remember, because I followed the Celtics like in the 80s. Kevin McHale absolutely obliterated Kurt Rambis going to the basket, which started this big brawl. Like that tells me that it was next level hatred among the teams. And then, of course, like in the 2008 finals, when Paul Pierce went off with a knee injury and they took him off on a wheelchair, and then 15 minutes later he comes out, it was like Laker fans just lost their minds because of that, you know? So that was like another classic moment.
So I knew this was going to be on your list, and I'm sure you're not surprised it's not on my list. It's a good one, though.
Well, I mean, you're not a passionate basketball fan.
Right.
Like, you follow basketball, but you don't have like a team that you're really passionate about.
Exactly.
You know? It's just interesting to see, like, are we going to have most of the same things on our lists? And like the order, like, I'm sure we have the same number 1, although off air you told me you didn't think so, which
No. We don't have the same.
mind.
We don't have the same number 1. I'm sure we don't. We're going to have some of the same, but in a different order.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's hear your 6. Your number 6.
So this is number 6. Could have been number 1, actually. The only reason it's number 6 is because I'm not sure if the judges are going to allow it, and I may have to remove it. So it's the Montreal Canadiens versus the Quebec Nordiques. And the reason I'm not sure if it's allowed is because it doesn't exist anymore. But during its existence, it was one of the most heated rivalries of all time in any sport. And you were talking about players hating each other. I mean, let's just think back to the April 20th, 1984, the game known as the Good Friday Massacre. That game basically ended Jean Hamel's career, if I recall.
It did, yeah.
So these two teams faced each other total, and again, some of these numbers may not be 100% accurate because I don't know how accurate the internet is, but what I was able to find is they played each other 144 times, and Montreal holds the edge, 79 wins, 53 losses, and 12 ties. Now, in the postseason, in the playoffs, they met 5 times. Montreal won 3 of those series. Quebec won 2 of them.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't need to tell you that anytime these two teams played each other, and you know what? It's a shame that there were so many brawls between these two teams because there were some really talented players, like the Stastnys, for example.
Michel Goulet.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, these teams both were excellent teams and could have just played great hockey. And it was marred by all these brawls, which I didn't like at the time and I still don't like. But it's certainly a rivalry that deserves to be on this list.
I mean, it does. I was going to put it on the list, and I didn't put it specifically because, like, I was like, well, it doesn't exist anymore. But you have every right to include it, and absolutely, very, very well deserved. I mean, and one thing to mention about it is like a big part of that rivalry was Michel Bergeron, the coach of the Nordiques. Like, he was just a ball of fire. I mean, he's still a commentator now on the French broadcast of hockey, and it's like, I wonder how he feels about, like, basically commenting on all the Canadiens games, because he must have just hate the Canadiens still, no? Like, I still, sometimes I don't get it, you know, but anyways.
There were some coaches that coached both teams, not at the same time, obviously, like Jacques Demers coached both Montreal and Quebec. And I think maybe Jean Perron might have coached both teams. I have to fact check that, but that's possible.
Good pick, Josh. Good pick.
Number 5.
So number 5, I'm sure this is on your list because you always, on every time we've done stuff like this, you always have an eye out for the women's sports. So, Canada versus USA in women's hockey. This could be number one, actually. I mean, they faced each other basically in every gold medal game of every international tournament. I have it here. Like, they faced each other in 5 out of 6 Olympics that was possible, and 18 out of the 19 World Championships, right? So, like, these are the two pioneering teams of women's hockey. They were the only good teams for many years. Now some of the other countries caught up, but I mean, it is huge, you know? Like, players from either team, either country don't have to be told the importance of when they're playing that opponent, you know, like there's no extra motivation needed, you know, like, which is like, and then of course you remember like there was accusations from Haley Wickenheiser that the American women were stomping on the Canadian flag in the dressing room, and this fueled the fire and all this, and like, I don't know, no one ever found out if that's true or not, you know, but I don't believe Haley Wickenheiser is just making stuff up, right? So
I heard that story, that she did make it up just to rile up her teammates. That's what I heard.
Oh my God. If she did, that's
exactly what Michael Jordan used to do. He used to make stuff up in his head just to motivate himself. Okay, number 5 for me is the Montreal Canadiens again, this time versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now,
that's a joke, Josh.
Well, I mean, they've played each other 836 times. Montreal holds the edge with 408 wins all time. In the postseason, they've actually met 16 times, and Montreal's won 9 of those 16. Now, recently, obviously in the last, 15, 20 years, Montreal has dominated the series in the playoffs, although they really haven't met in the playoffs that much lately, so I'm not sure you can say that. But Montreal beat them the most recent time, obviously this past summer. But in the regular season, lately, Toronto has been the much better team. So anyway, it's a very good rivalry because the cities are so close to each other, and the cities hate each other, and the fans don't like each other. And there are a lot of ex-Montrealers that live in Toronto. So when you go to a game in Toronto and Montreal scores a goal, you're not even sure if it's the home team or the visiting team that scored. So it's pretty cool.
Right. Even here, because even here, when I've gone to a game, a Canadiens-Leafs game here at the Bell Center, and there's always tons of Leafs fans there.
That's true. They make the trip.
They make the trip. I did not include this in my list. I didn't feel it was worthy because I have another Canadiens rivalry in my list, and I think it's bigger, better, and bigger. And I think most of the Toronto-Montreal rivalry is media driven. I don't think the players actually hate each other. And I mean, the fans from Toronto consider Montreal the biggest rival, but I don't think Canadiens fans consider Toronto the biggest rival. I think it's a one-way street.
I agree with you. I don't think Toronto is Montreal's biggest rival. I agree with that.
Number 4,
Eagles, Cowboys. Now, you know my history of being a fan, right? So I started off my life as a teen being a fan of the San Francisco 49ers. And then when my son became an Eagles fan in the last 10 years, I changed allegiances. I can't explain it. I just did, and I'm a huge Eagles fan. But the common denominator is that in both eras of my life, I've hated the Cowboys more than ever.
That's great.
I hated the Cowboys when I was a 49er fan, and I hate the Cowboys now as an Eagles fan. You know, so look, the NFC East is full of rivalries. I think Giants fans will tell you probably Giants Cowboys is huge. Redskins fan will tell you Redskins Cowboys, or maybe it's Eagles Giants, or who knows what it is. But I mean, as an Eagles fan, the Cowboys are definitely, number one on the most wanted list. Like I can't stand them.
He purposely mispronounced my name. Instead of saying Costanza, he'd say can't stand ya. Can't stand ya.
There's famous incidents that happened, when in the 80s and 90s when Jimmy Johnson got thrown stuff at him and the police had to escort him off the field. And then there was accusations back in the late 80s, early 90s again that the Eagles had like a bounty system and they were trying to injure certain Cowboys players. That's when Buddy Ryan was the coach, and I probably believe that that's true, So, that's the rivalry for me. Now, unfortunately, they killed us in the first meeting this year, and we still have a chance to get back at them again. But certainly the Cowboys are a lot better team right now. I have to give them that.
Very good pick. I had a feeling it would be on your list. I don't have any football on my list. So next for me, and I'm sure this one is on your list, it's the Montreal Canadiens versus the Boston Bruins. So
there you go. So you have the Canadiens 3 times out of 6.
Correct.
Oh my
Well, they
God.
have a lot of rivals. They've been around for a long time.
They have, yeah.
So these two teams have played each other 927 times, and Montreal holds the edge with 469 wins. In the postseason, Montreal has won 25 series against Boston. Boston's won 9. However, it used to be that Montreal would win almost all the time. Lately, the last, 15 years, I guess, Boston has dominated Montreal in the playoffs.
Although we did beat them a few times in a few key series, like...
Yes, the time where Dale Weiss and Milan Lucic in the handshake line. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But other than that, Boston has had a much better team the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it's actually quite embarrassing almost how Montreal has sunk to very low depths and Boston has risen. No, it's true. I mean, really, what has Montreal done in since they won the Stanley Cup? What have they done? They went to the finals last year, sure. But I mean, other than that.
No, they went to the conference finals twice.
Right.
In recent memory. Both times were like an aberration.
But that's nothing to write about.
No, nothing at all. No, nothing at all.
So while overall, in the history of the rivalry, Montreal holds the edge, lately, Boston holds the edge for sure. And of course, you may recall, I mean, neither of us were born, but in 1955, there was this huge brawl with Maurice Richard, which led to the Richard riot, and he got suspended for the rest of the regular season and all the playoffs. I mean, and that all started because of a game against the Boston Bruins.
So you're right. This isn't my list, and I'm going to get to it in a minute. I have more to say about this rivalry, and I mean, this, as Montrealers, actually, this should be number 1 on our list, and it's almost embarrassing that it's not, but it's not number 1 on my neat list either.
Number 3.
Number 3 on my list is Yankees Red Sox. Now, this is huge, right? I mean, after the Expos left, I gravitated towards the Red Sox. And I mean, I've always sort of had a soft spot for the Red Sox. I mean, a lot of people don't know that in Montreal, when we were teens growing up, we used to get the Red Sox games on local TV. Like, we're in their market here in Canada, because our American stations are in, Vermont and New York State and Maine and places like this, right, that are part of the Red Sox, territory. I mean, the Red Sox started, the rivalry started in 1919. How far back do you need to go to be a good rivalry? 1919 should be enough, right? That's when Babe Ruth was traded and the whole curse of the Bambino, apparently started until it was broken in 2004. And, obviously the rivalry had some great moments. Bucky Dent's home run in 1977. And then in the late 90s and 2000s, both teams were really good. And everybody remembers the big comeback in 2004 by the Red Sox, but people often forget how good that Red Sox team was in 2003 that lost to the Yankees with the Aaron Boone home run. That was an incredible series too. And when I told you that it's good when the players hate each other. So Pedro Martinez, tossing Don Zimmer to the ground, like a star player and an elderly coach, getting into physical altercation, that's pretty good, That's pretty good in terms of a rivalry.
You don't see that every day. That's for sure.
And what's interesting about the rivalry is that, the whole curse of the Bambino, up until 2004, the Yankees were always seen as the villains and the Red Sox as this plucky underdog. And since 2004, that's all changed, right? Because the Red Sox have had a lot of success. They've won several World Series. And they are just as much of an evil empire as the Yankees are, if not more,
Right, because they also have one of the highest payrolls in the league right now. So
exactly,
they're no different than the Yankees. And it's a great pick. I don't have any baseball on my list. Had the Expos still been around, I would have tried to squeeze them in here somehow, but I couldn't. So
But I mean, who do you think the Expos' biggest rivalry was? I don't know if we had one.
I was trying to think of that, and I'd have to say the Philadelphia Phillies.
Probably. It's the Phillies or the Cardinals. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, at the end, it was the Braves, but...
At the end, it was the Braves. Yeah, that's true. That's why I can't root for the Braves in the World Series.
Exactly, I can't.
I can't do it. And my son's asking me how come I'm not rooting for the Braves, because we have very close friends that live in Atlanta, right? So he's like, why can't you root for the Braves? Like, support our buddies, our friends. I'm like, I just can't. It's not in me.
No, I told this to somebody the other day. My two most hated teams in baseball are Washington and Atlanta. So I might be the only person outside of Texas rooting for the Astros in the World Series.
Oh my God, you're going to be the only person rooting for the Astros. My God. I might follow you on that. I don't think I'm going to watch. Anyways.
I'm not going to watch much, but listen, I never watch a full game anyway. It's what I do. Like between commercials of another game, I'll flip to the baseball game for a few minutes. That's what I do.
Right. All right. So who do you have at number 3?
So number 3, this is definitely on your list, and I'm pretty sure this is number 1 on your list. It's the Duke Blue Devils versus the North Carolina Tar Heels in men's basketball.
Good pick.
So, again, these numbers, I'm not sure how accurate they are, but apparently they've met each other 254 times. And actually, North Carolina has a slight edge with 141 wins. North Carolina has won 6 national championships. Duke has won 5. North Carolina has won 50 ACC championships. Duke has won 40. And here is probably the craziest fact. Between 1949 and 2019, they played each other 179 times. In those games, UNC has scored a total of 13,581 points. Duke has scored a total of 13,559 points. That's a difference of 22 points, which comes out to 0.1 point per game.
Wow.
That's how close this rivalry is. Not to mention that they're 8 miles away from each other, the two schools.
Yeah.
So that's number 3 for me.
Obviously that's a great pick. I'm in shock it's not number 1. Like I can't believe it's not number 1 in your list. I was so sure we were gonna have the same number 1, so I've just given mine away. But yeah, like that's a great. It's a tremendous rivalry, and like the fact that what makes it so great is that like the teams are always good. Both teams are like you went back to the 40s, like. They're always both good. To get to a year where they're both not in the top 25 is almost impossible.
And even when one team is not good, the games between them are still close all the time.
Right.
There's rarely any blowouts.
Yeah.
Number 2.
All right. So number 2 for me, Habs Bruins. You already talked about it. I mean, it's to me this is it. Like when I told you like. Canadians fans don't consider the Leafs the big rival because we know that our number 1 rival is Boston, right? They've played each other more times in the regular season and postseason combined more than any other teams, just because of the circumstances of, original 6, and then they were in the same division. Like at one point in the old Adams division, they played in the playoffs every year, right? Like
yeah, I hated
right?
playing the same team over and over again every year. It was so annoying.
84 to 92, they met in the playoffs every year in those years. So that's the gist of the rivalry. And then in 88, the Bruins actually beat us, which was the first time they had beat us in the playoffs in 45 years, right? Like think about that, like the futility, like, and I mean, like everybody's seen it, everybody's seen that highlight of like, the 1979 game, the too many men on the ice penalty, and then the Canadians scored and they send the game to overtime. Like Don Cherry, everybody knows Don Cherry as the Hockey Night in Canada guy, but like he was the coach of the Bruins in that game, like so it's really something, the Canadians Bruins is really something. It's still great after all these years, and like you said, more recent history doesn't. It's more tilted towards the Bruins. They've had a much better team, but obviously, like there's the recent series where PK Subban scored that goal coming out of the penalty box. It was the Bell Center went mental, and then obviously, well, like I said, player on player, but unfortunately, like Zdeno Chara on Max Pacioretty, probably like the dirtiest play in history. Bruins fans are going to lose their mind for me saying that, but I mean, the player. That's as close as we've ever come to a player getting killed on the ice. And I'm not joking, and I'm not exaggerating. I thought Pacioretty was maybe dead when that happened. Like, it was so severe, and he was motionless. Yeah, like, and then like you said, we talked about it in another episode. I forget what it was, but like when it spills into the players, like Milan Lucic threatening players in the handshake line, like that's gross. And then of course Andrew Ference with his, and I'm holding up the quotes, his equipment malfunction when he gave the fans the finger at the Bell Center.
I love that equipment malfunction. I love it.
Yeah, he said it was a problem with his glove that made his middle finger stick out. So, I mean, that's a rare occurrence. Player versus opposing team's fans doesn't happen that much, right? Like with an actual something, an actual tangible something. So great rivalry, and like it'll go to the next chapter. At some point we'll have a new chapter of Habs Bruins, and it'll all get stirred up again, so.
Well, obviously I agree with that pick. So next for me, you've already mentioned it. It's Canada versus USA in women's hockey.
I knew you'd have that on your list.
Yeah, this had to be on the list because this is like, in all these others, except for maybe Duke, North Carolina, and all the others, you could say like Montreal versus Boston or Montreal versus Toronto or Montreal versus Quebec. But in women's hockey, there are only two teams. I mean, yes, Finland is, up and coming, whatever, but Canada and USA seem to always meet in the gold medal game or the final game of every single tournament. So, for example, in the Olympics, there's only been 6 Olympics with women's hockey. Canada's won 4 and USA has won 2. World Championships, there's actually been 19 of them. Canada's won 10 of those and USA's won 9. And then I think actually Canada and USA are playing each other this weekend in a tournament. And I think Canada won the first game. I don't know who won the second game. But in any case, you basically know they're going to meet each other in the gold medal game of the Olympics this coming winter. And the thing is, when they have world championships for hockey, it actually means something. Not like the men's world championships when you basically have all these countries, but they don't have their best players. In the women's hockey at the world championships, every country brings their best players because they don't have to play in any other league. So it actually means something. Right. So total wins, Canada has in head-to-head matchups, Canada has won 84 times and USA has won 67. So Canada holds the edge overall in the tournament. Although in the last couple of years, USA has had very, very powerful teams. So I actually am afraid to play this team.
Yes and no, but I mean, yeah, I'm afraid, but like they're gonna face each other. It's inevitable. So we're gonna see who wins. Like we just had the World Championships and Canada won in overtime, right? Like, so yeah, it's gonna be fun to see this rivalry. Like I said about the Bruins when I said we're looking forward to the next chapter of Canadians Bruins, we don't have to look forward to the next chapter of Canada USA Women's because it's the next time they play, which is going to be in the next tournament, right?
Right, and you mentioned they just won in overtime in the World Championships, but the fact that it went to overtime, that it was that could have gone either way.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Number 1.
All right, well, we arrived at number 1. You know what mine is. I'm not sure what yours is, actually. I'm really kind of puzzled. So mine is Duke, North Carolina. That's like we always say, when we come up with these topics, you already have one slot, like one item, one pick in mind, right? So when I picked this, I was like, well, Duke, North Carolina, that's number 1. I mean, obviously, like I didn't even have to think about it, But then when I started putting together my list, I was like, well, maybe the others could pass it, right? And which I think is what happened with you, right? Because it didn't end up number 1. So like you said, the campuses are 10 miles apart. You said 8, I think. I had written down 10. Maybe it's 8. Who knows?
It's probably 10 kilometers.
Yeah, no, well, it's called Tobacco Road. Like that's what they call it, So, like I said, both teams have been good forever, right? So, when these two schools play each other, it's all bets are off, And I mean, there's been some incredible games. Like you talked about it. I think it was your play of the year.
Yeah, it was early in 2019, I think, before the pandemic. When
early in 2020, February 2020.
Right, sorry, early in 2020, just before the pandemic, when
Yeah.
Duke was playing against North Carolina. Duke had no business winning that game, and somehow they tied it up at the last second because was it Jones?
Trey Jones hit a miracle
he
shot.
intentionally missed a free throw, got his own
Yeah.
rebound, and hits a miracle shot to tie up the game. And then a similar thing happens in overtime for Duke to win the game.
Right. Wendell Moore got the putback.
Correct.
On an actual air ball, right?
Correct.
And then I don't know if you remember, 95, there was like the Jeff Capel like miracle shot heave that sent the game into overtime
Correct.
again. And then, the game that really stands out for me is actually the 1991 ACC tournament final. I watched this at your house. We watched this together. And Duke got killed 96-74. We were like one of the top teams all year, expecting to be a number 1 seed going into the ACC tournament. And like, this was our hope to like finally win the to win the national championship. And we got killed by North Carolina on like the final game before the tournament selection, which changed our seeding from a number 1 to a number 2. And they became a number 1 and we became a number 2. Right. So, it changed the course of everything because Duke went on to win they went on to face UNLV in the semifinal. They beat them, and then Kansas in the final, right? So like, just goes to show, like, we took this hard loss and then they turned that around and just said, forget it. And we're going to win out now, which is what happened.
I'm sure you remember the game. I don't know what year it was, where Gerald Henderson elbowed Tyler Hansbrough and Hansbrough was bleeding profusely.
I love that. Hansbrough was such a dirty little rat. He deserved everything he got.
That's like the picture that they show every time when they talk about the rivalry. It's great.
Yeah. Well, every time they play, they come up, they pull out all the old clips, right? So, yeah. All right. So what's number 1 for you?
So number 1, it didn't make it onto your list, but you did mention it. It's Canada versus Russia in men's hockey. And I'm not just talking about like professionals. I'm talking about World Juniors also.
Yeah, of course. Huge.
So, I mean, I don't have to talk about the 1972 Summit Series. We know about that. But let's look at Canada Cups, for example. So there were only 5 Canada Cup tournaments, actually. I thought there were more. Canada won 4 of them. Russia won the other one. Of the 4 that Canada won, Canada only played against the Soviet Union in one of those, actually.
Wow.
I thought it was more as well when, before
It's because the 87 series, that was Canada Cup. Oh, I'm thinking of Rendezvous, which was something else. So
right, Rendezvous is NHL versus Russia, so I'm not counting that.
Right.
And by the way, when I say Russia, Soviet Union, it's all one thing.
It's all one thing.
Now, in the World Junior Championships,
Oh,
so Canada has won 18 of those, which is a little unfair because, half the time the tournament is in Canada, which is an unfair advantage. Russia has won 13 of those. Now, they've met in the gold medal game, or gold medal round, if you will, because sometimes it was more than one game, I think. They've met head-to-head 15 times, and Canada has an edge of 9-6 in those 15 times. But this is like, I know that now everyone wants to see Canada versus USA, but back in the day, and even still now a bit, I still get more excited to play against Russia than I do against the United States.
I think Canadians, obviously everyone in Canada follows hockey, holding that up, like rolling my eyes and holding up quotes and stuff. But like, when these tournaments come along, I think Team Canada hockey fans, I think definitely would view Russia as the bigger rival than the United States. I think so. I do.
Right. Well, there's certainly more history in this one.
Yeah.
The United States one is newer.
Yeah. That's a really good pick. I mean, obviously there's so many memorable moments, like the Canada Cup 87. We talked about this during the pandemic when we were watching old games. Remember? It was great to watch. And obviously all those games were 6-5, it was high flying hockey and, Gretzky and Lemieux and at their best. And then in the more recent times, like you said, in the World Juniors, Russia's got the best of us a few times. Honestly, like they did. There was a few times where I really thought Canada was going to win gold and Russia prevailed, So, and then of course it goes the other way because there's that year with the, Jordan Eberle's famous goal, like they had us beat, with 5 seconds left in the game.
We were on the ropes and somehow we pulled it out.
Good list, Josh. That's a really good list. And I'm almost embarrassed that I told you that I didn't want to include Canada, Russia on my list, and then it was your number one.
That's okay. That's why we make lists.
That is why we make lists. So yeah, that's really,
I
really
couldn't
good.
not include it. I mean, maybe I could have put it somewhere else on the list, but I had to include it.
Right.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
Do you have anything you want to finish off with?
I have one quick thing. Do you remember the movie High Fidelity with John Cusack?
Of course, I read the book.
So did
also.
I. The book was actually better than the movie.
The book is way better than the movie.
Yeah.
You can't even compare. I actually hear people talking and read about High Fidelity like as if it's some really good movie. It wasn't really a good movie at all. I don't think.
It was okay.
It was okay, but the book was so much better. The book takes place in England. It had this different feel to it, and then the movie they made it Chicago, and it didn't work, you know?
So I bring it up because I recently discovered that there is a TV show based on the movie called High Fidelity. Now, there's only one season from what I could gather. I haven't seen any episodes. I'm not even sure where I can watch it. I don't think it's on Netflix. And I don't know who's in it. I don't know if it's good, but I'm curious to watch it now.
I watched a few episodes of it. It was on a channel that I got. I forget which one. Anyways, I did watch a few episodes.
Is it on the Hulu?
No, I think it's probably on Crave. I think you could probably get it. No?
I'll have to check.
It stars Zoe Kravitz, so the daughter of Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet.
Okay.
She's in a lot of shows. Like you saw her in Big Little Lies. She's in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know who she is.
And so she's the main character. And so it's the reverse of it's a take on the movie and the book where the lead is a female, and it's still about her past relationships, but it's like a much like more serious type of show. Like I really didn't get into it. I wanted to like it. I watched a few episodes and I just couldn't really get into it.
Okay. Well, I mean, if I ever find it, I'll check it out.
Sounds good. So speaking of shows worth watching, I watched a new show. We finished it this week, and I highly recommend it to everybody. And it's called Only Murders in the Building.
Where is this? On what streaming service?
I have it on Disney Plus. And I actually thought it was like a Disney Plus, like they have a channel on Disney Plus called Stars. And I actually thought it wasn't actually a Stars like original. I thought it was like the first thing that Disney made that was like original, that wasn't like Marvel or Star Wars, but it's not. I researched it. It's a Hulu show. So I think in Canada we get it on Disney, but American listeners can definitely find it on Hulu. Apparently it's one of the most streamed shows on Hulu in the last months and stuff. It got really popular. It's under the radar because I kind of found out about it by accident. It stars Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. Like the most weird ensemble cast, you know, but
Steve Martin and Martin Short have done stuff together before, but I don't think they've ever worked with Selena Gomez.
No, I mean, she's got to be 40 to 50 years younger than them, right?
It's an interesting cast.
So it's about three New Yorkers who live in this very exclusive apartment building. They are not friends, and they kind of bond over the fact that they like the same true crime podcast, like a made up podcast. And then when there's a murder in their building, they make a podcast of their own to solve the murder. And it's really, really charming and really, really funny. And one thing that you would love, and I mean, I don't know if a lot of people picked up on it. I picked up on it right away. There's this piano music that they play throughout the episodes that is a complete rip-off or homage, or however you want to call it, to the theme song of Serial.
Oh, I love that song.
Right? So they play this piano music, not as the theme song, but during the episodes. And I'm like, that is totally the theme song of Serial. And I played it for my wife. I played the theme song of Serial. She's like, oh, it's the same song. But I mean, obviously it's not the same song, but it's totally like a shout out to it, you know, like.
Right. I get what you're saying. Now, I look forward to, I want to watch this show now, the way you're describing it.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And there's going to be season 2 because season 1 ended with an opening for season 2, and clearly it was popular enough, so they're going to make season 2. So there you go.
Very cool. So I'll add it to my list, but I'm actually not going to start watching the show until January 1st because, as I told you, I think I've already picked my favorite show of 2021, and I don't want anything to usurp that.
You're protecting your number 1 pick.
Yeah. So I'll wait till January to start watching.
Perfect.
I mean, I don't have Disney Plus or whatever you said it's on anyway. So
Yeah.
even if I wanted to start watching it, I couldn't.
By the way, it was great seeing you last week. It was awesome.
Yeah, we went to the Canada versus Panama soccer match. It was great.
That was one of the better sporting events just as an experience, I think, that I've ever been to. Honestly.
I haven't been to many soccer matches, but what's good about soccer is there's always something going on. Like there's none of these, like you go to a football game, CFL or NFL, there's like a play that lasts 10 seconds and then nothing for 2.5 minutes. And then a play that lasts for 10 seconds and then nothing for 2.5 minutes. But soccer's not like that. There's always something going on.
We looked down at our phone to check something and then they scored and then we missed it. And there's no replay. We were lucky if they show the replay. Like it was really, but that was, first of all, it was the first big thing that I've been to since the pandemic, right? So going to a stadium with 26,000 other people is a huge deal, right? It's not something that happens every day and not something you're really that comfortable with. Although I felt pretty comfortable.
I'm glad it was outdoors.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, indoors I wouldn't have went. But, just having everybody there singing "Oh Canada" and cheering for Canada, it was very patriotic.
Yeah, it was a fun game to go to for sure. And one of our friends was also at the game, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was just really an awesome experience all the way around. All right, so great episode. And I guess we'll pick a topic. We'll let the listeners know what it's going to be for next time.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you between now and then.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.